Today we are at Garden Solutions. Earlier this spring we did a tour through these wonderful rock gardens and so many of you had just oohed and ahed over them. So I thought, you know what, let's head back in the fall and show you what they look like in a different season. Hi, I'm Heidi from Garden Crossings, and like I mentioned, we are at Garden Solutions. They are a wholesale grower, so they would sell to garden centers such as ourselves. They have brands like Sunsparkler sedum, the Chick Charm hen and chicks, and they also have the Feathered Friends Ajuga. So we're going to go ahead and walk through this garden. I am going to put a disclaimer right up front. There is not a lot that is labeled in this garden, so I may not be able to give you exact variety names. When we get back to the greenhouse, I might try to see if I can match it up with their catalog and try to figure out what the plant names are based off of their catalog. But for now, we're just going to talk about, in general, the different plants that are in this garden. So let's go ahead and take a walk. So the Sunsparkler sedum, they are a low-growing sedum. Typically, they only get maybe about 8 or so inches tall. They're a perfect ground cover type of sedum. And the one that we're seeing here right in front of us, that's in full bloom right now, this is the Dream Dazzler, part of the Sunsparkler series. Beautiful magenta blooms, and the foliage on this is excellent as well, although we're really not able to see the foliage because the flower coverage is just so prolific right now, which is perfect. That's just what you want when you're growing a sedum. Sedum are a great plant for the pollinators as well. We're noticing a lot of bee activity, which it's always nice to have the late season color for our pollinators. Here's one of their Feathered Friends Ajuga. This is a nice light chartreuse green variety. This is a plant that in the spring was blooming with beautiful purple spikes of flowers. It's a very low growing ground cover for sun or shade. Typically Ajuga is deer resistant, although in my northern Michigan garden we found out that the deer loved it, but that wasn't a problem because they grew back and they bloomed beautifully for us this spring. Here's a tall garden phlox, kind of towards the end of its color season. A lot of the plants this time of year are kind of tired, but I do think it is amazing, even here after Labor Day, all the color that some of the different foliage and stuff bring into the garden. This is a great blue plant, almost really one of the most intense blue colors we've seen. This is plumbago, and it too is kind of a little bit of a creeping ground cover. It's got some interesting foliage on it, and you can see the flowers are just such a nice vibrant blue, which is a great color splash for the late season garden because we're seeing a lot of burgundies and reds and yellows. This blue really pops nicely. Here's another of the Feathered Friends Ajuga. Nice dark black, big leaves. I just love how that black foliage really stands out against the white rocks in this garden. Corabels, great color here. I'm not sure exactly which variety that is. Could be like black pearl or something, but just a nice dark black. And that's what we're going to see. We're going to see a lot of foliage, colors, textures. It's a unique, different garden style that I think many of us maybe don't do, but it's easily obtainable. It's drought tolerant for the most part. There's not a lot of water going on here, and it's unbelievable. The owner of the company, his whole front yard is a garden just like this, and it's absolutely stunning. Let's take a look over here at this bed. This bed is a bed actually that their employees kind of put together. They all got a section of the bed and were able to grab the plants they wanted and use their own little creativity in their own little area. So there's a lot of sedum in here, a lot of the Ajuga. You can see nice bright red. In addition to the bright foliage sedum, they also have some really nice lime sedum. I think that one might even be lime zinger. I think that was one we carried a few years back, but look at the coloration going on. And even next to it, the tricolor, the red, the pink coming through. Great foliage color. A little Weigela Monet, which has got the white and green foliage. That's really kind of pretty in there as well. The broad, thick, dense leaves there of Virginia. Spring bloomer, but I love how that foliage adds some really interesting texture into this garden space. There's also a lot of conifers in this garden, and I do not know much about conifer shrubs, but there's a lot of really cool evergreens in here that have wonderful texture, and they're very A lot of them are very small and compact. Here's Angelina's teacup, very dainty little sedum there, bright chartreuse green color. Let's see, what else do we got? Yeah, I think we'll just kind of walk, and as I see something, I'll talk about it, but I think I want you to enjoy just what can go on in a beautifully well put together rock garden. So I also mentioned, in addition to the Sunsparkler sedum and the feathered Friends Ajuga, they also have the chick charms, and there's a bunch of little hen and chicks just kind of all nestled in throughout this garden. And look at the beautiful colors here of the chick charms. I think we carry about 20 or so different varieties. There's different colors that go on. One thing with chick charms, or hen and chicks in general, is depending on where you're at in the season, they're going to be a different color. So in some points of the season, they're going to be just more of a, a green or a flat, let's kind of say, color. And then in cool weather, or in this case in really warm weather, some of those vibrant colors start to show. So when we ship the chick charms, we often will say, don't go by the color that you're seeing when they're shipped. They're going to transform and change throughout the season. So those are one of those plants you have to be patient for and wait for them to do their time to shine, depending on where it's at in the season. But I'm loving just these little pokes of red in here from all these ground cover sedums. Beautiful toffee twist grass. That typically is an annual, although it's funny, we've had them come back here in our zone 5B garden, and you can see there's a lot of them in this garden as well. It's a different kind of a grass, and sometimes we have that perfect situation where we can get plants that aren't hardy in our zone to come back. So I did just mention we are a zone 5B, 6A here. This garden probably is a little bit more like a 5B than a 6A. So to give you an idea of the hardiness that these plants are having to live in. If you have little nooks and crannies in your garden, you can see that a lot of these plants are the perfect little plants to tuck into little nooks and crannies. So if you've got a little spot that you need just a little something, tuck in a little Ajuga or a little bit of hen and chicks, and beautifully placed. Wow, this is a beauty right here. What vibrant coloration. And again, I have to apologize, I don't know which one this is, but isn't that just gorgeous? Really great coloration. As we stand kind of at this end of the garden, just looking over it, I'm loving all the texture and just the little pokes of color. The grass, how they add just a little bit of height and motion into this space. I can definitely see some remnants of alium, which are blooming this summer, but even though they're spent, they add a lot of character into this garden space. There's even a little bit of lavender, and we're going to see more lavender as we continue to go. But the lavender too just adds a lot of texture and unique interest into the garden space. Let's see which way to go. We'll actually head this way next. There's about 6 different little garden spaces here, so we'll try to show them all to you. This is a fun thing that they did with the chick charms. It's kind of a little planter that has 4 little compartments, and they just took 2 different varieties of chick charm, 2 different varieties of sedum, and kind of planted it in. And it's kind of neat how it gives kind of a, not really rainbow because it's not a rainbow effect, but just kind of a different colors going on within a planter. In this garden, as we kind of look over it, there's a lot of allium in here. Also a lot of lavender. I'm not seeing a lot of grass really. There's a few, I think, red barren grasses that are poking little shades of red. But most of what you're seeing here with the wispiness in this garden space is definitely lavender. And the lavender is well past its prime right now. But from a distance, it still kind of has a really nice kind of purpley silvery hue, as it just kind of adds a little wispy, fun airiness into the garden. Along with the alium. This is a beautiful planting here of Ajuga. So Ajuga is a plant that does like to spread. It does send runners. So it's a plant that is the right plant for the right place in your garden. So it's definitely not going to be the right plant for every place, but in here, as it's spreading around, it's doing exactly what it needs to do. Up at our northern Michigan garden, we have it planted on a very steep hillside, and we're using it for erosion control to hold the hill back. But I'm loving the patchwork of all the different colors here going on with the sedum and the Ajuga and the hen and chicks. Here's a little fescue grass here. Kind of looks like it could be blue whiskers or something like that. Nice silvery blue foliage, just a very tight mounding type of grass. Looks like there's a little bit of creeping phlox in here as well, which is great for spring color. But to be honest, these Ajuga, when they were blooming this spring, it just lit this whole garden up with beautiful shades of purple. A few Veronica, which those would be earlier season color. A few little flowers remaining at this point. I think as we're walking through too, to see all these different hen and chicks and the various different colors going on, who knew, right, that there were so many different variations and colors in the hen and chick lineup. Just beautiful. And we're going to actually stand at this end of the garden and look over it, because I think it's important to, not only see the plants close up, but also to see just what does it look like again from a distance. Just so much color and texture going on. This is a nice feast for the eyes. I feel like we're in kind of Disney World here a little bit with all this beautiful flowery eye candy. This garden bed here has a lot more of the little bit more bigger, more structured type plants with the evergreens and such. Beautiful specimen here I talk about a lot, Anna's Magic Ball. And I think that's really neat to see it here planted in the rock garden, just to kind of show you what a small little specimen that plant is and how it can be used in a different situation than what maybe I've shown you myself using it in my gardens. More mass there of Ajuga. There's some Nepeta there up on the top of the hill. Cat's Meow, perhaps. That's an early season bloomer. But with a light trim that continues to flower throughout the entire season. Another Corabelle, which is great foliage color. Looks nice with that chartreuse Ajuga there. I thought this was the cutest little plant here, and I don't even know, Piscea? I don't even know. Very cute though, and I'm loving how the pine cones kind of come off the tips there. So around this big huge rock, we can see in the background there's Agastache. I'm not sure what variety of Agastache he uses here in his garden exactly, but it could be Rosy Posy up there. It could be, I don't know, if I had to guess, it's probably Rosy Posy and maybe Peachy Keen. They're a little bit shorter than the Proven Winter varieties. Ajuga just nestling on and around the rocks there. Definitely a beautiful, like I said, a beautiful collection of evergreens. Just so many fun, different colors and textures, and compact habit too of so many of these plants. Tucked in behind this rock, there's a little barberry. That is the Sunjoy Neo. Sunjoy Neo features beautiful, bright, orangey coloration. That's a fairly young plant there, but that, for this time of year, there's a lot of greens going on in this garden space. That orange is really going to be a very nice addition. Beautiful evergreen there in the middle. I'm, again, not sure the variety, but something we have that's similar would be Fluffy, Arborvitae Fluffy, with a nice yellow coloration. So I may not have the exact plants, but I can compare it to something that I'm familiar with and maybe you're more familiar with as well. More of the plumbago. This here is a Agastache, a tall one. Every garden has to have at least one hydrangea, right? So beautiful hydrangea with its fall coloration. Really nice. Yucca. So yucca is another plant that you often see in rock gardens. And this one here with that bicolor foliage looks really nice. Yeah, a lot of times you're going to plant those in more drier areas, or like I said, a rock garden situation. Coreopsis, that's another plant that's great for rock gardens or drought tolerant areas. Coreopsis is a fairly long blooming perennial as well, so typically that will be in bloom for a good couple months or so. Beautiful red bud. I love the habit there of red buds. Great coloration too in the foliage. My Monet Weigela. More corbels, more hydrangeas. Garden behind us here, more of the yucca. There is Wine and Roses Weigela, which has got great foliage, and then the spring that's got beautiful pink flowers. In the back there is a 9-bark, maybe ginger wine. A little bit of Nepeta here mixed in this bed too, which gives a lot of color. So this is quite a fun looking evergreen with its kind of whirly twirly needles on it. A friend of mine has a pretty mature shrub that's similar to that, and she lets me cut a few branches every year for my porch pots, and it adds a lot of cool just texture with those needles just kind of spinning and twirling like such. Also there's spirea in this garden. So spirea have added foliage interest, as well as you can see it's flowering. So it's the end of the season, so it's not really putting on a lot of flowers right now. But midsummer, spirea are a great summer flowering shrub. Here's a cute little area we found in the garden. So it's always fun to mix little things in, and here's a cute little fairy garden mixed in. A lot of just really dainty, fine looking plants. All right, I think we've got one more garden to hit, so let's head on over to it. Most of the flowers in this next garden are going to be, again, more shrubs, not so much of the sedum, but there is some Ajuga in here as well. So again, a lot of just really unique and different evergreens. There's some sedum. I think this one actually has a tag with it. Oh, nope, that's for a different plant. Some yarrow, which is another drought tolerant plant. Obviously you can see it's done because it's the end of the season. But if we look past the spent blooms and into the middle of the plant, you can see how it's putting on a lot of new growth. So it's going to try to give a little bit more flowers here at the end of the season, although I don't know how many flowers we'll actually get because it is fall and things are starting to cool off quite a bit. Another Weigela. Love that black foliage there of the Weigela. Here's a Caryopteris. This is a gorgeous specimen of Caryopteris. Sunshine blue too. So we had talked earlier about the blues of the plumbagos. This is another great blue flowering plant for late season. And the bees, the bumblebees, honeybees are just really enjoying this plant right now. So hopefully, for those of you who this is the first time you've seen this garden, I would invite you at the link below to head over to our Facebook page and watch the spring tour of this garden. It was absolutely phenomenal. And I think for those of you who are now watching this as a follow-up to that original video are going to be really just impressed to see like what this garden has done now later in the season. If you have any questions or comments, please feel free to leave them below. And if you're new to the station, we welcome you to subscribe. Thanks for watching. I'm Heidi from Garden Crossings.